Leela Adebayo stepped out of the taxi, her eyes wide as she took in the grandeur of the Ngwani estate. The sprawling mansion stood tall against the backdrop of the lush green hills, its imposing gates a barrier to the outside world. She adjusted her modest dress and walked toward the entrance, feeling a mix of excitement and apprehension. Inside, a stern-looking woman named Mary, the head housekeeper, greeted her. "Welcome to the Ngwani estate, Leela," Mary said, tone brisk. "Your primary duty will be to care for Kaio Koro, young master. He is not well, and you must respect his privacy at all times." Lila nodded, curious but cautious. "I understand. What exactly is his condition?" Mary hesitated, her eyes darting around. "It's a rare illness. Most people find it difficult to be around him. Just do your job, and you'll be fine." Lila's curiosity grew as she followed Mary through the winding corridors of the mansion. They stopped outside a large, ornate door. "This is his room," Mary said. "Knock before entering." Taking a deep breath, Lila knocked gently. When there was no response, she opened the door slowly. Inside, the room was dimly lit, with heavy curtains drawn shut. A faint, unpleasant odor hung in the air. Lila ignored it, focusing instead on the figure seated by the window. "Mr. Ngwani," she called softly. The man by the window didn't turn to face her. She heard a faint sigh. "Who are you?" he asked, his voice tired. "I'm Lila, the new housemaid," she replied. "I'm here to help." There was a long pause before he spoke again. "Help? We'll see about that." The next morning, Leela returned to Kweku's room with a tray of breakfast. She found him in the same spot by the window, his back to her. The room still felt heavy with an air of solitude and sadness. "I brought you some breakfast," Leela said gently, setting the tray on a nearby table. "Would you like to eat?" Kai finally turned to look at her. His face was striking, with sharp cheekbones and deep, brooding eyes, but there was an unmistakable sadness in his expression. His appearance, though handsome, was overshadowed by the persistent odor that lingered around him. "Why are you here?" Kai asked, his tone guarded. Lila met his gaze steadily. "I'm here to take care of you," she replied. "I want to help." Kweku's eyes narrowed, suspicion clear on his face. "Everyone says that at first, then they leave." Lila shook her head. "I'm not like everyone else," she said softly. "I'm not here to judge you." There was a flicker of something in Kweku's eyes, curiosity. He looked away, staring out the window again. "They all say that too." Undeterred, Leela continued, "I believe everyone deserves kindness, Mr. Nguyen, even those who've been through more than their fair share." Kai remained silent, but Leela could sense the tension easing, just a little. She took a step back, respecting his space. "I'll be here if you need anything," she offered before quietly leaving the room. As she closed the door behind her, Lila felt a spark of determination. Kai was more than his illness, more than the rumors that surrounded him. She resolved to uncover the truth behind his sadness and perhaps help him find some peace. Over the next few days, Leela returned to Kweku's room regularly. Each time she brought something different, a book, fresh flowers from the garden, a new kind of tea. At first, Kai remained distant, barely acknowledging her presence. But gradually, she noticed small changes. One afternoon, as she arranged a bouquet on his bedside table, Kai spoke. "Why do you keep coming back?" he asked, his tone softer than before. Lila smiled gently. "Because I want to. I think you could use a friend." Kai scoffed lightly but didn't tell her to leave. Encouraged, Lila decided to share a bit of her own story. "I grew up in a small village," she began. "My grandmother raised me after my parents passed away. She taught me that everyone has a story, even if they don't want to tell it." Kai glanced at her, his eyes searching her face. "And what's your story, Lila?" She paused, feeling the weight of his question. "I've had my share of losses, but I've also learned that kindness can make a big difference." For the first time, Kweku's lips twitched into a faint smile. "You're different from the others, Lila." She nodded. "Maybe that's a good thing." They fell into a comfortable silence, the tension between them slowly dissolving. As Leela prepared to leave, she turned back to him. "Would you like to join me for a walk in the garden tomorrow? The fresh air might do you some good." Kai hesitated, then nodded slowly. "Perhaps. We'll see." Leela smiled, sensing a breakthrough. For the first time since she arrived, she felt hope that maybe, just maybe, she could help Kai open his heart again. A few weeks into her stay at the Ngwani estate, Lila began to notice strange things. One afternoon, while dusting the library, she overheard a hushed conversation between Amare, the trusted assistant to Obi Okoro, and another staff member. Lila paused, her ears straining to catch their words. "We need to keep things under control," Amare said sharply, his voice barely a whisper. "If anyone finds out what we've done, it'll be the end." The staff member nodded nervously. "But what about Kweku? He's getting better." Amare's eyes narrowed, and he lowered his voice further. "That's why we must be careful. If he starts asking questions, it could ruin everything." Lila's heart pounded. What were they talking about? She knew she shouldn't be eavesdropping, but something in Amare's tone made her uneasy. She quickly moved away, pretending to organize some books. Later she confided in Kweku. "I overheard Amare talking about you today," she said carefully. "He mentioned something about keeping things under control." Kai frowned, his brow furrowing. "Amare has always been close to my father. He handles most of the estate's affairs. But what would he have to do with my condition?" Lila shook her head. "I'm not sure, but something feels off. I think we should keep an eye on him." I hesitated, then nodded. "All right. But be careful, Lila. If Amare is hiding something, it could be dangerous." Lila agreed, but a new determination settled in her heart. She would uncover the truth, no matter what it took. As the days passed, Lila and Kai spent more time together. Their initial awkwardness slowly gave way to a comfortable familiarity. They took long walks in the estate gardens, their conversations growing deeper and more meaningful with each passing day. One evening, as they sat on a bench beneath a blooming jacaranda tree, Kai glanced at Lila. "You know," he began softly, "I've never felt this close to anyone before. Not even my father." Lila smiled warmly. "I'm glad. I feel the same way. I've never had a friend like you, Kweku." He chuckled lightly. "A friend? Is that what we are?" Lila's cheeks flushed, and she looked away, suddenly shy. "I don't know, maybe something more?" Kai reached out and gently took her hand in his. "I'd like that," he admitted, his voice barely more than a whisper. They sat in silence for a moment, the air between them thick with unspoken emotions. Finally, Kai spoke again, his tone serious. "Lila, I want to trust you, but I've been hurt before. People have always judged me for my condition, and I'm afraid of letting anyone get too close." Lila squeezed his hand reassuringly. "I understand, Kweku, but I promise you, I'm not here to judge you. I'm here to help you, no matter what." Kai nodded, a small smile tugging at his lips. "Thank you, Lila. I believe you." Their bond, once fragile and tentative, now felt stronger than ever. They both knew that whatever lay ahead, they would face it together. One evening, after a particularly emotional day, Lila found Kai pacing his room, his face drawn with frustration. "Kweku, what's wrong?" she asked, her voice filled with concern. He turned to her, his eyes flashing with anger and pain. "I'm tired of this, Lila, tired of being treated like some kind of monster. I just want to be normal." Lila stepped closer, placing a comforting hand on his arm. "You are normal, Kweku. You're just different, and there's nothing wrong with that." He let out a bitter laugh. "Different? Is that what you call it? I can't even go outside without people staring at me, whispering behind my back. I feel like a prisoner in my own home." Lila's heart ached for her. "I know it's hard," she said softly, "but you don't have to go through this alone. I'm here for you." Kai looked at her, his eyes searching hers for sincerity. "Why are you here, Lila? Why do you care so much?" She took a deep breath, deciding it was time to share her own truth. "Because I know what it's like to feel alone," she admitted. "I came here because I needed a fresh start, away from my past. I thought maybe, just maybe, I could find a place where I belonged. And now, I think I've found it, with you." Kweku's expression softened, and he reached out to cup her cheek. "Lila." Before she could say anything more, he leaned in and pressed his lips to hers. The kiss was soft, tentative at first, but quickly deepened as they both gave in to the emotions they had been holding back. When they finally pulled away, Kai whispered, "Thank you for being here." Lila smiled, artful, always. The morning after their kiss, Lila was tidying up Kweku's room when she noticed a stack of papers peeking out from under his bed. Curiosity piqued. She carefully pulled them out and saw they were old medical documents. As she flipped through the pages, she noticed something strange, several entries that seemed inconsistent. "What is this?" she muttered under her breath, scanning the record. There were multiple mentions of treatments and chemicals that didn't seem related to any known therapy for Kweku's condition. Her brow furrowed as she read further. Leela? Kweku's voice startled her. She looked up, finding him standing by the door, curious expression on his face. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to pry, she stammered, holding up the documents. But these? There are some things in here that don't make sense. Kai walked over and took the papers from her, his eyes scanning the pages. His expression darkened. I don't remember half of these treatments, said slowly. And these chemicals, I've never heard of them. Leela bit her lip, debating whether to share her suspicions. Kweku, do you think it's possible that your condition isn't genetic? That maybe someone is doing this to you? Kweku's eyes widened, and he shook his head. That's impossible. Why would anyone do that? I don't know, Lila admitted, but I think we need to find out. Maybe Amare knows more than he's letting on. Kai nodded, his face grim. Then we'll have to be careful. If you're right, we can't trust anyone. Determined to uncover the truth, Lila discreetly photographed the documents, feeling a mix of fear and resolve. Whatever secrets the Nwani estate held, they were about to unravel them. Days passed, and Lila couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Every time she saw Amare, he seemed to be observing her more closely, his eyes lingering too long. One afternoon, as she prepared tea for Kai in the kitchen, Amare approached her. Leela, he said smoothly, his voice low, I hear you've been spending a lot of time with the young master. Is everything going well? Leela forced a smile, basking her unease. Yes, Mr. Tades, Kai is making progress. Amare nodded slowly, his gaze sharp. Good. We all want what's best for him, don't we? She nodded, feeling the weight of his words. As Amare walked away, Lila's hand shook slightly, spilling hot tea onto her hand. She winced, quickly wiping it away. She knew she had to be more cautious. Later, when she brought the tea to Kweku's room, he noticed her anxiety. Leela, what's wrong? He asked, his concern evident. She hesitated, then confessed, I think Amare suspects something. He's been watching me closely. Kweku's face tightened with worry. We need to be careful, Lila. If he finds out what we're doing. I know, she whispered, but we can't stop now. We're close to finding out the truth. Kai nodded, taking her hand in his. I trust you, Lila, and I'm with you, no matter what. She smiled, feeling a surge of warmth despite the danger. Thank you, Kweku. We'll get through this together. As they sat together, the weight of their shared secret hung heavy in the air, but so did their determination. They both knew there was no turning back now, and Kai became almost unbearable, each day filled with stolen glances and fleeting touches. One night, after hours of poring over the suspicious documents in Kweku's room, they found themselves closer than ever before. Kai leaned back, rubbing his eyes. I'm exhausted, he admitted. But I can't stop thinking about what we found. What if this has been happening for years, right under my nose? Lila touched his arm gently. We'll figure it out, she assured him. Together. He looked at her, his expression softening. Lila, you've been incredible through all of this. I don't know what I'd do without you. Lila felt her heart flutter. You don't have to think about that, she whispered. I'm not going anywhere. Without thinking, Kai leaned forward and kissed her. This time, there was no hesitation, no doubt, just a raw, overwhelming need. Lila responded immediately, her arms wrapping around his neck as they lost themselves in the moment. When they finally pulled apart, both breathless, Kai rested his forehead against hers. We should be careful, he murmured. If anyone finds out. Lila nodded, her fingers tracing his jawline. I know, but I don't care. Not right now. They spent the night wrapped in each other's arms, finding solace in their shared passion amidst the chaos around them. For the first time in a long while, they felt alive, united by both their love and their quest for the truth. As dawn approached, they knew that their relationship had crossed a line, but neither regretted it. Their forbidden desires had only strengthened their resolve to uncover the secrets, threatened to tear them apart. Lila couldn't shake the feeling that Amare was hiding something crucial. Determined to find out more, she decided to search his office while he was away. Late one evening, when the mansion was quiet, she made her way to the small, cluttered room that Amare used as his workspace. She pushed open the door, her heart racing. The room was dimly lit, and the air was thick with the scent of old paper and leather. Lila knew she had to be quick. She didn't have much time before someone noticed her absence. She started rifling through the drawers, carefully checking for anything out of the ordinary. Just as she was about to give up, her hand brushed against a small, locked drawer. Her pulse quickened. She rummaged through the desk and found a set of keys, her fingers trembling as she tried each one until, click, drawer opened. Inside, she found a stack of receipts, all for unusual chemicals. Her eyes widened as she recognized some of the names from Kweku's medical records. "What is this?" she whispered to herself, flipping through the papers. Footsteps echoed down the hallway. Panic surged through her. She quickly closed the drawer, locked it, and slid the keys back where she found them. With the receipts hidden under her shirt, she slipped out of the office, just in time. Back in Kweku's room, she laid the receipts on the table. "Kweku, look at these," she urged. "These are the chemicals from your medical record. Amare has been buying them." Kai stared at the receipts, shock and anger filling his eyes. "You're saying he did this to me? Deliberately?" Lila nodded, her expression grim. "It looks like it. We need to confront your father, Obi, with this." Kai clenched his fists. "Then let's do it. It's time for some answers." Kai and Lila approached Obi's study with a sense of urgency. Obi looked up from his desk as they entered, his expression one of surprise. "What is it?" he asked, seeing the determined look on their faces. "Father, we need to talk," Kai began, holding up the receipts. "These are records of chemicals linked to my condition. Amare has been buying them." Obi frowned, glancing at the papers. "Amare? That doesn't make any sense. He's been with our family for years." Lila stepped forward. "I overheard him speaking to another staff member about keeping things under control. I believe he's been poisoning Kai to manipulate you and gain control of the estate." Obi's face tightened with disbelief. "That's a serious accusation, Lila. Are you certain?" Before Lila could respond, the door burst open, and Amare stormed in, his face a mask of anger. "What's going on here?" he demanded, his eyes darting between them. "We know what you've been doing," Kai said, his voice steady. "You've been poisoning me to keep me sick and to control my father." Amare's expression hardened. "You have no proof," he sneered, "and even if you did, no one would believe you over me." Obi looked conflicted, his loyalty to Amare wavering. "Amare, what is this about?" he asked, his voice tense. Amare turned to Obi, his tone suddenly calm. "Sir, they're confused. Kweku's condition is affecting his mind. We must get him proper care." Kai stepped back, realizing the danger. "Father, he's manipulating you." Lila grabbed Kweku's hand. "We need to go," she whispered. "Now." Understanding the urgency, Kai nodded. "We'll be back with proof, Father." As they fled the study, Kweku's heart pounded. They needed to find safety and gather the evidence to expose Amare's treachery. Kai and Lila found refuge in a secluded cabin owned by a close friend of the Ngwani family, hidden deep within the dense forest surrounding the estate. Cabin was small but cozy, stark contrast to the grandeur of the mansion. Here they felt a momentary sense of peace, away from the prying eyes and dangers of the estate. Lila set a fire in the small hearth, its warmth a comforting embrace against the cold night. "We should be safe here for now," she said softly, glancing over at Kweku, who was staring into the flames, lost in thought. Kai nodded slowly. "Can't believe Amare would do this," he murmured. "He's been like family to us, to me." Lila moved to sit beside him, taking his hand in hers. "Sometimes the people closest to us are the hardest to see clearly," she said gently, "but we have to stay focused. We need to find out exactly what he's done and why." Kai sighed, leaning back against the worn couch. "I just don't understand his motive. What could he possibly gain from this?" Lila frowned, her mind racing. "Control, maybe? Over you, over your father, over the estate?" Kai nodded, his expression hardening. "Whatever his reason, we need to stop him. But we'll need help." Lila's eyes lit up. "I have a friend from my village who knows about chemicals and medical forensics. If we can get her to analyze these receipts, maybe we can prove Amare's guilt." Kai squeezed her hand. "Then let's do it, whatever it takes." They sat together in silence, the fire crackling softly in the background. Despite the uncertainty of what lay ahead, they found comfort in each other's presence. Their bond stronger than ever. The next morning, Lila contacted her old friend Akello, who was skilled in research and medical forensics. They arranged to meet at a nearby market, away from the prying eyes of anyone from the Ngwani estate. When Akello arrived, her face broke into a wide smile. "Lila, it's been so long," Akello greeted, embracing her tightly. "What's going on? You sounded urgent on the phone." Lila quickly explained the situation, handing Akello the stack of receipts. "We think these chemicals were used to make Kai sick," she said. "We need to know if that's possible." Akello flipped through the receipts, her expression growing serious. "These are dangerous substances," she said quietly. "If they were administered over time, they could cause symptoms similar to a genetic disorder. Let me run some tests. I'll need a few hours." Kweku, who had been standing a bit away, joined them. "Thank you, Akello. This means a lot," he said, his voice tense but grateful. Akello nodded. "Anything for Leela. I'll get back to you as soon as I have something." As Akello left, Kai turned to Leela. "Do you trust her?" he asked, concern etched on his face. "With my life," Leela replied firmly. "She's one of the few people I know who would never betray me." They waited anxiously in the market's small cafe, each passing minute feeling like an eternity. Finally, Akello returned, her face grave. "You were right," confirmed. "Chemicals could definitely cause Kweku's symptoms. I've documented everything." Kweku's face hardened. "This is it, Leela. Proof that Amare's been poisoning me. We need to confront him and clear this once and for all." Leela nodded, determination flaring in her eyes. "You need to be careful. He won't give up easily." Back at the cabin, Kai sat by the window, staring out at the dense forest that surrounded them. Despite the breakthrough, doubt gnawed at him. "Lila," he began hesitantly, "why are you really here? Is it out of pity? Or because you feel like you need to help me?" Lila turned from the small kitchen table where she was sorting through the documents, her brow furrowing in surprise. "What do you mean, Kweku?" Kai sighed, rubbing his temples. "I mean, everything that's happening, all that you're doing for me. I can't help but wonder if you're just trying to do the right thing rather than genuinely caring about me." Lila walked over to him, kneeling by his side. "Kweku, look at me," she said softly. He turned, meeting her gaze, his eyes filled with uncertainty. "I'm here because I care about you. This isn't about pity or obligation. It's about us. What we've found together, what we've become." He hesitated, and whispered, "What have we become?" Lila leaned closer, her voice steady. "Something real. Something worth fighting for. Don't doubt that. Not now." Kweku's expression softened and he pulled her into his arms, holding her tightly. "I'm sorry," he murmured. Everything feels so uncertain." Lila hugged him back, her heart aching for him. "I know, but we're in this together, and I believe in us." Their embrace deepened, turning into a kiss that was both passionate and desperate, a reminder of their shared strength and vulnerability. For now, in each other's arms, they found a brief respite from the storm brewing around them. As night fell, Leela and Kai made the decision to return to the Nwani estate under cover of darkness. They knew they needed more evidence to confront Amare, and time was running out. The estate loomed in the distance as they approached quietly, sticking to the shadows to avoid being seen. Inside, the mansion was eerily silent. Lila and Kai moved cautiously, their footsteps barely making a sound on the polished floors. They headed straight for Amare's office, knowing it was their best chance to find the final piece of evidence they needed. Leela began searching through drawers and files while Kai kept watch by the door. "We need to hurry," he whispered, his eyes scanning the hallway for any sign of movement. "I know," Lila replied, her hands moving quickly but carefully. "There has to be something here." Just then, she found a small notebook hidden beneath a stack of papers. She opened it, her eyes widening as she read the first few lines. "Kweku, look at this," she said urgently. Kai moved to her side, reading over her shoulder. The notebook detailed various transactions and meetings, clear evidence of Amare's involvement in poisoning Kweku. "This is it," he said, his voice filled with both relief and anger. "We've got him." Suddenly, they heard footsteps approaching. "Someone's coming," Kai hissed, grabbing the notebook. "We need to get out of here." They quickly slipped out of the office and ducked into a nearby room, holding their breaths as the footsteps grew louder. The door to Amare's office creaked open, and they could hear him muttering to himself. Lila squeezed Kweku's hand, silently urging him to stay calm. They had what they needed, but the real challenge was just beginning. Lila and Kai waited until the footsteps faded, then carefully slipped out of the room and made their way back through the darkened corridors of the mansion. They knew they couldn't stay much longer. It was only a matter of time before Amare realized something was missing. "Let's check my father's study," Kai whispered as they moved quietly through the halls. "He might have something that can tie all of this together." Lila nodded, and they quickly headed to Obi's study. The room was dim, lit only by the faint glow of moonlight filtering through the heavy curtains. They searched quietly, knowing they didn't have much time. As Leela opened a drawer, she found a leather-bound diary with Obi's initials embossed on the cover. "Kweku, I found something," she said, her voice hushed but urgent. I joined her, and they opened the diary together. Inside, they found Obi's handwritten notes detailing his growing suspicions about Amare. There were entries about missing funds, odd behavior, and concerns over Kweku's unexplained illness. "Father was starting to suspect," Kai said softly, his eyes scanning the pages, "but he didn't know it was Amare. He didn't have all the pieces." Lila nodded, her heart racing. "But now we do. This is the evidence we need to confront him, and to make your father understand." Just as they were about to leave, the sound of a door creaking open made them freeze. Lila's breath caught in her throat. "We have to go," she whispered. They carefully slipped out of the study and made their way back to the hidden path that led out of the estate, clutching the diary tightly. They knew they had everything they needed. They also knew the danger was far from over. With the diary and notebook in hand, Lila and Kai made their way to a secluded spot just outside the estate to plan their next move. They knew confronting Obi was risky, but they had to try. Kweku's father needed to know the truth before it was too late. "I think we should show him the diary first," Leela suggested. "Let him see that he was already suspicious of Amare." Kai nodded. "Good idea. Might make him more open to believing us." They waited until dawn, then returned to the estate, taking care to avoid being seen. They found Obi in the garden, his face lined with worry. He looked up as they approached, surprise evident in his eyes. "Kweku, Leela, what are you doing here?" "Father, we need to talk," Kai said, his voice steady but urgent. "It's about Amare. He's been lying to you." Obi frowned, but Lila stepped forward, holding out the diary. "We found this in your study," she said gently. "You were starting to suspect him too." Obi took the diary, his hands shaking slightly as he flipped through the pages. His face paled as he read his own words. I did suspect something," he admitted. "But I never thought it could be Amare. He's been with us for so long." "We found more," Kai added, showing him the notebook. "This proves he's been poisoning me, using chemicals to make me sick." Obi's face contorted with a mixture of anger and betrayal. How could he? Why? Just then, a shadow fell over them. Amare stood at the edge of the garden, his expression dark. "'Cause you were weak, Obi," he said coldly. "And now, it's too late for you to do anything about it." Amare's words hung in the air like a dark cloud. Obi took a step back, his face a mask of shock and disbelief. "Amare, what are you saying?" he demanded, his voice trembling. "I'm saying that your time is up," Amare replied with a cold smile. "I've been in control for a long time, and I'm not about to let you ruin that." Kai moved protectively in front of his father. "You won't get away with this, Amare. We have proof. The authorities will be here any minute." Amare's smile faded, replaced by a look of cold determination. "I don't think so," he said quietly, reaching into his coat pocket. Before anyone could react, he pulled out a small vial and hurled it to the ground. Thick, acrid smoke filled the air. Lila coughed, her eyes watering as she struggled to see through the smoke. "Kweku, Obi," she called out, panic rising in her chest. Through the haze, she saw Obi collapse, clutching his chest. "Father," Kai shouted, rushing to his side. Leela followed, her heart racing. They knelt beside Obi, who was gasping for breath. "Poison," Obi choked out, his face pale. "He poisoned me." Leela's eyes filled with tears as she grabbed Obi's hand. "No, stay with us," she pleaded. "We'll get you help." Obi shook his head weakly. "It's too late," he whispered. "Kweku, I'm sorry for everything." Kai held his father tightly, tears streaming down his face. "Father, please." Obi's eyes closed, his body going limp. Lila felt a sob rise in her throat as she looked up at Kweku, whose expression was a mix of grief and rage. "Amare will pay for this," Kai vowed, his voice low and filled with anger. "I swear it." Leela and Kai stood in shock over Obi's lifeless body. acrid smoke still lingering in the air. Their grief quickly turned to anger as they realized Amare had vanished into the thickening haze. "We can't let him get away," I said, voice steely with resolve. He gently laid his father down and rose to his feet, determination blazing in his eyes. Leela nodded, wiping her tears. "He must have gone toward the back of the estate. There's a way out through the gardens." Together, they ran through the mansion, their footsteps echoing in the empty halls. The servants, alerted by the noise, watched them with wide, confused eyes. Lila and Kai burst through the back doors and into the sprawling gardens, cool night air hitting their faces. "Amare!" Kai shouted, his voice echoing through the trees. "You can't hide forever. This ends now." From the shadows, Amare emerged, his face twisted with anger and desperation. "You think you've won?" he sneered. "You have no idea what you're up against." Kai advanced, fists clenched. "I'm done with your lies, Amare. You took my father from me, and I won't let you hurt anyone else." Amare reached into his jacket. Before he could pull out another vial, Isla threw a stone at his hand, knocking the vial to the ground. It shattered, releasing another burst of smoke, but this time they were prepared. "Give it up, Amare," Leela shouted. "Police are on their way." Amare's eyes darted around, realizing he was cornered. "You'll never take me alive," he hissed, lunging at Kai with a knife. Kai dodged the attack and grabbed Amare's arm, struggling to disarm him. Two men grappled, each trying to gain the upper hand. Lila searched desperately for something to use as a weapon when suddenly, the wail of police sirens pierced the air. Amare's face paled. In one final, desperate move, he broke free from Kweku's grip and tried to flee. But the police were already surrounding the garden. "Drop your weapon," a police officer commanded, guns drawn. Amare hesitated, his eyes wild with fear and anger. When he made a move to run, the police fired, hitting him in the leg. He collapsed with a scream, clutching his wound as the officers closed in. "It's over," Kai said, breathing heavily, looking down at Amare. "You'll pay for everything you've done." The sun began to rise over the Nwani estate, casting a warm glow over the gardens. Lila and Kai watched as the police led a handcuffed Amare away, his face twisted with pain and defeat. The ordeal was finally over. Cost had been high. Kai turned to Leela, his expression a mixture of sadness and relief. "I still can't believe he did all this, and my father." His voice trailed off, choked with emotion. Leela took his hand, squeezing it gently. "I'm so sorry, Kweku. Your father loved you, and he tried to protect you in the end. Remember that." Kai nodded, wiping a tear from his eye. "I know, and I'll make sure his memory is honored. We'll rebuild this estate and the family business, but we'll do it differently, honestly and with compassion." Lila smiled softly. "I'll be right by your side, every step of the way." He turned to her, gratitude and love shining in his eyes. "I don't know what I would have done without you, Lila. You've been my strength through all of this." She blushed slightly but held his gaze. "And you've been mine, Kweku. We faced this together, and now we have a chance to build something new." Kai nodded, his resolve strengthening. "Then let's do it. For my father, for us, and for everyone who deserves a better future." They embraced, holding each other tightly, finding solace in their shared grief and hope. As they stood together, watching the dawn break over the horizon, they knew a new chapter was beginning. Chapter filled with possibilities, love, and the promise of a brighter tomorrow. Their journey had been fraught with danger and loss, but now, with the truth finally revealed and justice served, they could begin to heal and build a life together, free from the shadows of the past. With Amare gone and justice finally served, the Nwani estate began to heal from the chaos that had nearly torn it apart. Lila and Kai worked together to rebuild both the family business and the lives of those who had been affected by Amare's treachery. Days turned into weeks, and as the estate flourished, so did the bond between Lila and Kweku. Their love, tested through trials and adversity, only grown stronger. They decided to hold a small ceremony in the garden where they had first confessed their feelings, surrounded by close friends and family who had supported them. As they exchanged vows, the sun shone brightly overhead, a symbol of the new chapter they were embarking on together. Kweku's voice was steady as he looked into Lila's eyes. "I promise to stand by you, to love you, and to build a life filled with honesty and compassion. Dad." Leela's eyes glistened with tears of happiness as she replied, "And I promise to be your partner, your strength, and your greatest supporter, wherever our journey takes us." They sealed their vows with a kiss, and applause filled the garden. Future was theirs to create, free from the shadows of the past and filled with hope for what was to come. Thank you for joining us on this journey with Lila and Kai in Secrets of the Heart. We hope you enjoyed the twists, turns, and heartfelt moments of their story. If you love this story, please like, share, and let us know where you're tuning in from in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, TR Double World, for more captivating tales of love, courage, and adventure. Hit the notification bell so you never miss an update. We appreciate your support and can't wait to share more stories with you. Until next time, keep dreaming and keep believing in the power of love. Thank you for being a part of the TR World community.